everyone. Oh, let's try that again. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
That's much better. It gives me great joy to officially welcome you to this celebration of Susan Linn, a commercial-free visionary. I'm Kevin Hepner, the current chair of the board of Campaign for Commercial-Free Childhood. You know, when Susan let the board and the staff of CCFC know that she was ready to begin a new chapter in her life, we started to think long and hard about the kind of do that would best celebrate her 15 years creating and sustaining CCFC. We knew it had to be fun and lively. We knew it needed to have great food, good friends, but we also knew we wanted to salute Susan in a very special way. One of the things that we realized was that we all know Susan as an amazing woman, but I'm sure each of us individually understands the full range of what is included when we apply that adjective to her. We wanted to find a way to shine a light on the multiple ways that she has impacted the world we all live in. So it seemed to us that the best way to do this would be through the voices of some of the people whom she has worked and whose lives she has touched. When you hear the words of Alvin Poussaint, Diane Levin, Michele Simon, Lucia Villela, I knew I was going to do that, I told you, Villela, we will all be able to follow the journey that brought Susan to CCFC and perhaps get a glimpse of where she's heading next. But before I introduce our first speaker, we want to share a memory from Susan's lifelong friends, Rita and Harold Rubenstein, which will tell a little bit more about how Susan became Susan.
Wonderings on Susan Linn's retirement from CCFC. How could we have known when we first met in junior high school in the early 1960s how we and our world would change in the next 50-plus years? When we watched those early shows on TV, how could we help but be magnetized to those captivating and entertaining images, not understanding that many of them, Buffalo Bob, Arthur Godfrey, Mrs. Goldberg, were also there to sell us things. Is there any way we could have suspected that the work of Anne Lynn, an early childhood educator before the term even existed, would so deeply influence the work of her daughter, Susan? How could we have imagined that you would parlay your teenage job of doing puppet shows at children's birthday parties with your setback of heart surgery one summer into puppet therapy work for very sick children? Can we be at all surprised that the little girl whose dad fought in the Spanish Civil War, the youngster who sat on Paul Robeson's knee and sang with him, the child who grew up in mixed-race neighborhoods and schools, would have such a keen, enduring, strong sense of social justice? When we read Vance Packard's Hidden Persuaders in high school, could we ever have suspected that his work of pulling the curtain on marketers would become yours? Over time, we have borne witness to you, transforming yourself, from model to motivator, from thespian to therapist, from entertainer to educator, from actor to advocate. You have taught us all a great deal. With your model, we will continue to use our creativity, imagination, collaboration, humor, scholarship, and courage to continue to build a better world for us all. We have been so lucky to have you in our lives. Stay well and continue to do your good work. With love, Howard and Rita Rubenstein.
The Rubensteins were not able to be with us tonight, but their message has set the tone for all that is to follow. And so now I'm very pleased to ask our dear friend, Dr. Alvin Poussaint, to begin the Susan Linn salute.
He's doing the mic. Does it work? Yes. Oh, good. Good to see all of you. Nice turnout for Susan Linn and the food. It's been a very pleasant evening, and I'm very pleased to be talking about Susan. When I first met her, we really gelled very quickly because she reminded me of all the left-wing kids I grew up with in New York. And we had a lot in common, including folk songs and left-wing songs and all kinds of things. And we even sang one last night. Joe, I dreamt you saw Joe Hill last night. You know that song? Radical song. Okay. Good, Susan. Anyway, it's been a joy to work with Susan, and it's been an incredible learning experience to work with Susan. And I say that as a psychiatrist. She's been very informative, and she's not predictable all the time, except that she has a remarkable creativity that's just natural in her bones, which she uses very, very well. And she's used all of this skill on the behalf of children, behalf of advocating for them, and it has made CCFC a major success. And her accomplishments, I think, are unequaled by any other organization that I know of. Oh my God. Right? You know some, Susan? I first started working with Susan when she was working on a project for with Fred Rogers' Family Communications Group called Different and the Same, where she used puppets to help demonstrate the nature of prejudice, which she was going to use working with 3rd and 5th graders. And it was an excellent project, and it was a way of just, well, Bob Eastler's here, he may say something about that. But that's when I first met Susan before she began to work for the Media Center. But the Media Center, which probably you haven't heard of, was started in 1994 at the Judge Baker Children's Center, and Susan got on board that same year as the Associate Director of the Media Center, and things got moving along. Susan had an idea for teaching social skills. We were all about using television, educational television shows, and we wanted to do one on teaching social skills to young children. And Susan came up with this idea for a TV pilot called Willoughby's Wonders, about a soccer team where the kids worked out their issues and problems. And we got lots of grants, and then we went through a period of chaos at the Judge Baker Children's Center producing this show. We actually produced the show out of Judge Baker and did all the work, and we didn't know what we were doing. And it turned out very, very well, to all of our surprise. We said, these creative people just throw things in there and it all comes out very well. So we, WGBH television picked it up and showed Willoughby's Wonders on television here in New England. And lo and behold, Susan, it won an Emmy Award for New England as the best children's special of that year. And Susan was the executive producer. I'm telling you, we all didn't know what we were doing, but it worked out in a very positive way. We even got funding of $500,000 from afterward from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but we couldn't match it, and the series was really prohibitively expensive. You just couldn't do it financially. But I think what really dated the CCFC was the show Teletubbies. That was a very educational show where these Teletubbies walked around going, ooh, 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 ooh. And it taught the kids something. I don't know what it taught them. But I went to London for a meeting with the Annenberg Foundation, and they were pushing Teletubbies, not the foundation, but the producers of Teletubbies, and they were beginning to market it to children below the age of 2. Now that's critical. And they were marketing it to babies, which we thought was outrageous. So when I got back here, Susan and I talked about it and then wrote a series of articles. I think one in American Prospect, wherever the editor is, wasn't it?
Yeah, Bob's.
Bob's here, yeah. American Prospect on criticizing Teletubbies, and I think that laid the seeds for the campaign for commercial-free childhood, which was at first called Stop the Commercial Exploitation of Children, which Diane Levin is going to talk much more about. But Susan has gone on to do many things, and I'm not going to outline them all because other people will, and there's too much to outline. We could give you a whole half-hour slideshow, and we wouldn't cover what CCFC has accomplished. We left, CCFC left Judge Baker in 2010 because they didn't like our kind of advocacy. It made them nervous. And Susan made them nervous, and I made them nervous. Everybody made them nervous. And they said, we don't want you kind of people making us nervous around here. So we said, okay, we'll go. And Susan went down to the nonprofit center, and she has thrived there in her work. And CCFC has expanded, and you'll hear more about that. But tonight I salute Susan for all she has given to the cause of social justice and enlightenment in the campaign to stop the commercial exploitation of children. She is a national treasure. Welcome to the podium, Diane Levin.
Well, it's an honor to be able to be here, Susan, to be able to have my chance to talk about the roots of our work together in this amazing organization. I want to start by thanking Wheelock College for yet again welcoming CCFC to this wonderful setting, which just provides such a perfect place for us to give this honor and voice this wonderful appreciation to you. And I think there's a perfect match between the mission of Wheelock, which is to improve the quality of life of children and families, and all these years of your work and your work with CCFC, trying to improve the life of children and families. We need it now more than ever, the work that you're doing, and it's just we're so grateful to have it, that where you've gotten it to, so that now you can leave, and I'm not terrified at what's going to happen now that you are leaving. Thank you, Josh, for that. I want to thank you, Susan, for using your many talents and gifts for accomplishing the mission that you have at CCFC. Your gifts, you have many gifts, and you have just put them to such perfect work at CCFC. You heard about the awards. When you decided to start CCFC, you never knew it would get to this point, but it started when you heard about awards being given, the Golden Marble Awards, for the best ads and promotional campaigns directed at children that were happening in New York. And You called me up and you said, Diane, these awards are being given. It's terrible, don't you think? I said, yes. She said, let's ask our friends to go with us to New York and organize a protest. I'm sure we can get someone to go with us, and Alvin will come and you and I will go and we'll do a press release and we can make something happen. And that was the beginning. We sent out a message to our friends. There must have been about 40 people there, and some of them are still here today. That was the beginning of CCFC, little did we know. And we had a press conference, but we reserved a room at the hotel to have our press conference. When the press release went out the week before about a press conference being held about the problem about giving awards for ads and promotional campaigns, and we were going to speak about it, suddenly we got a phone call, Susan got a phone call, that we hadn't signed the contract for some reason, and therefore we lost our room, we couldn't have it. Susan was not thwarted. Susan talked to someone in New York who went and got us a permit to do our press conference on the street. And this was one of Susan's great gifts that I want to talk about. Her ability to network and organize, her ability to create the hook and problem solve and find ways to bring people together, and her ability to find ways to make things happen that she thinks should happen no matter what. I have this as your gift 1 and your gift 2. I have more gifts here for you. So we were all going and we all showed up, we all were on the street, we had our megaphone, and we had a lot of press because just before a press release, there had been a report that came out from the Federal Trade Commission saying that the entertainment industry was intentionally marketing violence to children through the media. And we were able to hook onto that, so they were looking for stories, and we had stories for them that we used at the press conference. So now we all met, but the next year we were ready to actually, thanks to Susan's idea, actually book a room at the hotel, sign the contract when the awards were being given, and actually hold a mini conference that morning on how marketing harms children. Some of you may remember this. And we actually arrived at the hotel, and there were a big sign there saying the conference on how to market to children, at which the Golden Marble Awards were being given on marketing to children. And then there was the How Marketing Harms Children conference. And it was smaller and right next to it. And we had our conference, and at lunchtime, when the awards, the Golden Marble Awards were being given, thanks to Susan, we gave the Have You Lost Your Marble Awards. And this was Susan's brilliance, again, at coming up, her gift, at coming up with the right hook to capture the problem without needing 500 words, which I often need, as you can see now. And then she also had this resilience, you know, when we couldn't go on the street, she figured out when we couldn't have our room at the hotel, what we could do. When the next year, when the conference was moved to the Yale Club, so that we couldn't do the same thing at the hotel, she figured out that Alvin had a connection with Yale too, and we got a room at the Yale Club too. Okay. So Susan, another gift was her ability to frame the issues to get media attention, as you did with the Have You Lost Your Marble Awards, but with many issues through the years. And then the way you used Audrey at our press conferences to really communicate, I think, the voice of children, the voice of child development. It was humorous, people thought it was wonderful, but you needed so few words and were so ingenious at getting the voice of children and child development out there and children's needs out there through this amazing Audrey, who I adore. If she could be my child, I would adopt her. And this outstanding ability to help others end up appreciating the salient and important needs of children in this humorous way that brought people into our cause and really created a movement around these issues. And finally, that we were able to, that you were able to provide a model for everyone about how to have a voice for children around marketing, that is still probably the kind of most important voice we've had. But now we do hear it more, and people will speak up, and they realize, yes, you will be criticized. When I was told I couldn't speak at a conference in Rhode Island because Hasbro was there and it was a conference they were funding, you gave me your voice, your kind of role model gave me the voice to say, well, then the Boston Globe will know all about it. That I was able to do it too. I wouldn't have thought of that if it hadn't been for you, so you have been a model for me. So now I just want to thank you for all you've done. I would like to give you a certificate, the gifts of Susan Linn, so that you can remember as you move forward with all the things you're doing, just how much we appreciate you. And now I'd like to introduce Michele Simon, who will speak further about Dear Susan.
So I also have a list. I thought about doing a top 10 things that I admire and try to emulate, but I had to kind of cull it down to 3. So I want to talk about ways that Susan has influenced my activism. And so one way is Susan has this incredible ability to say the most radical things but sound incredibly reasonable, right? I mean, when we started this work, it was really crazy. I mean, she's always reminded me that what we're doing is crazy. So she's out there saying crazy stuff like, marketing to kids should just stop, but she sounds like, of course, it's just common sense. She doesn't sound like a radical. She doesn't sound like, someone you wouldn't want to be associated with. She's calm, and she uses facts, and she uses moral reasoning. And I've learned that. I really tried to take that into my way of speaking with the media and speaking with others, that the more reasonable you sound, the more people are able to listen. And that is so important when we're really saying very hard things. Another aspect that I admire is, in this age, particularly of social media and just media in general, there's a lot of activists out there where it's all about them, right? So a lot of self-promotion, and certainly in the world I am, in the food movement, there's a lot of celebrity advocates, shall we say. It's never for Susan been about her. It's always been about the issue, right? It's always been about the children, the issue. It's never been about putting Susan Linn's name first. It's really always been about the cause. And again, I try to remember that, even though I'm on Twitter, but, I try to remember that when I tweet, it's not look at me, it's look at this. This is important. So that's another thing I've really learned from her. And then my number one aspect of Susan's way of being, and what I've really learned and what I've taken with me, is her just unflinching sense of morality on these issues. And, in the food world, there's always been an aspect of it that is not really based in ethics. So, when folks in the food world talk about marketing to children, it's usually on what I call the grams of sugar, fat, and salt approach to, the issue. So in other words, what is the nutritional content of the Happy Meal? As if that's the problem with marketing a Happy Meal to a child. And what I learned from Susan was, no, it's not about the nutritional content of the Happy Meal. It's about the fact that it's fundamentally unethical to market anything to a child. And it doesn't matter if it's a Happy Meal, if it's a banana, if it's a sexualized doll, if it's a violent video game. And that has just really infused my activism in the food world. And I take that with me, and I feel like I'm trying to kind of spread that message. And so, in this work, it's really hard sometimes to know your impact. And while certainly Susan has a lot of accomplishments, obviously there's a long way to go when it comes to stopping marketing to children. But what's really important is how your message is spread to others. And so now that I'm able to inculcate this message into my own activism, that it's fundamentally an immoral act to market to a child, and the nutritional content doesn't matter. I am spreading that message to others in the movement, and that's what we're all doing in this room, is taking this fundamental message based in morality. And I also want to say that it's also brave to use ethics as a argument even. So there's a lot of activism where, we're using fact sheets, right? We've got the facts to prove that we're right. Susan has those facts. She's good at the research, but she cuts through it all with this fundamental message based on morality. And my favorite example of that is in, an interview she did, I think it was in the film Consuming Kids. And to just sum up what was wrong with marketing to children, it's just wrong. And so that's the message that I've taken with me and I've tried to spread, and I want to thank you for that, Susan. And now I want to introduce Lucia Villela. Thanks.
Oh, there she is now.
Good evening, everybody. The day before yesterday, I was in a meeting in Brazil with 20 people. Among them, the CEO of Pepsi Cola, the marketing director of Coca-Cola, the CEO of Google Brazil, among others. Some of them didn't know me when I arrived at the meeting, and when I got there, somebody asked my name, and I just said, Lucia Villela. So I see some people look at me, oh, you are Lucia Villela from Instituto Allen? I said, yes. Boy, you have no idea the amount of trouble you cause us. This is the impact Susan and CCFC, had, not only in my life or Instituto Allen, but in companies, press, government, everything in Brazil. Important to say, last year, marketing to kids is, since last year, marketing to kids is legally forbidden in Brazil. Not that it doesn't happen or that companies are not trying to revert the scenario, but still, it was a huge step. Today we have, WHO, OAS, and even UN have groups to discuss how to end marketing to kids. So I think, we are accomplishing a lot of things. Thanks, Susan, again. 10 years ago, I came to the United States to understand how you were doing, what we were doing to stop marketing to kids. I was studying this theme back in Brazil, and I didn't know anyone working to do anything about it to stop marketing to kids in Brazil. So Marcos, my husband, Googled, was wanting to help me, and so he Googled the subject, and he found CCFC on the computer. And then he calls me and said, look, there's this woman here, Susan Linn, and there's this CCFC. I think you should read those. You're going to like it. I think this is what you want to do in life. This is your dream. Look, there are some people doing this. So, and then he says, oh, look at this. There's this thing saying that there's a congress to talk about the subject in 1 week from now. Should we go? I can go with you. It's okay. So we came. And we went to this conference in Washington. And suddenly I was in a van, Marcos and me in a van, together with Alvin and some people that are here tonight. And we didn't know anyone. We were just starting to study more the subject. And our goal was to have just 5 minutes with Susan Linn. We didn't know then. And to buy some books or listen to talks. And that's what we wanted to do. But we ended having hours of talk with Susan, and we also were, we were so motivated and so inspired by her. She doesn't even know how much inspires people, I think. So when we went back, I decided to focus Instituto Allen, which is the NGO, the foundation I have back in Brazil. Just, I said, I'm going to stop everything. I'm just going to focus in this subject, and this is what we have to end marketing to kids. I have to help them, and I have to do this in Brazil too, and I have to call people, what can I do, what can we do? So Marco said, I'm going to help you too, and we hired a small team to start doing this with us back in Brazil, and we started doing it always together with CCFC and Susan. Still in 2005, we organized the first forum to discuss children and commercialism in Brazil. And Susan, not only Susan, Susan and Audrey came. And not only they inspired the group that was their group, it was a few people from academics, politicians, activists. There were some press too. This group of people, they already deal with subjects related to the subject, but there was no one really talking about ending marketing to kids. So the group started to understand after Susan's talk, how important that was, and the group got so strong, and we became all really close friends. It's a group of almost 50 people, and that's how everything started back there. That's how much Susan inspires, and people from all over. And since then, Susan went to Brazil many times, gave a lot of talks and interviews, and helped us a lot. But also she went as a friend. Our relationship grew so much. Today she is one of my best friends. So everything it's mixed. Okay, so many things to say. When Brazilians finish high school, we have a standard test and like SAT for you guys, but our SAT has also an essay to do. So last year, about 9 million young people wrote those essays, and the theme, marketing to kids and its implications. The 50 better essays were published and, on the press, and all of them were totally against marketing to kids. Thanks, Susan Linn. Thanks. Thanks, Susan. What else? Well, I love you, Susan, so much. She knows that with all my heart. And thank you for everything you brought to the world, everything you are, and for helping reminding us, what really matters in the world. And Alvin, I'm sorry, she's an international treasure.
It's so moving and inspiring to hear how this work has spread around the world, and every time I hear Anna speak, it's really just incredible. Thank you, Anna. 12 years ago, I read an article in The Nation magazine that changed my life. It began, a half-dozen child psychologists lurked around New York's Yale Club at a convention called Advertising and Promoting to Kids in search of new higher-paying clients. They were hoping to sell their smarts to marketers and advertisers, attending lectures on topics such as emotional branding. As one marketer put it, today's advertisers must employ a full frontal attack on children. Over the past decade, more and more psychologists had been helping corporations win their war, successfully preying on kids' developmental stages, anxieties, and vulnerabilities. In the crowd sat Susan Linn, an idealistic, old-fashioned therapist, gasping and sighing in disgust. As the guest speaker declared, remember folks, all kids want to do is fit in and brand them when they're babies. In disbelief, Lynn exclaimed loud enough for her fellow attendees to hear, these are the only people I know who talk about in kids incessantly without asking, but is it good for them? Lynn was at the conference not as a participant, but as a spy. as an organizer of another conference held at the same time, one floor below, the conference Diane talked about before, called Consumer Kids, Marketers' Impact on Health, she wanted to hear the rhetoric from the marketers firsthand. She had intentionally planned the conference along with a demonstration outside the club to fall at the same time and place as the advertising one. Reading that article was a revelation for me. As someone who had worked in the media industry and in a first grade classroom and was now in graduate school studying child development, I knew that something was terribly amiss with childhood, but I had a hard time pinpointing exactly what it was. Susan was not only articulating what the problem was, but she was doing something about it, taking the fight directly to the people who were harming children for profit. Over the years, I've seen so many people have the same reaction upon hearing Susan speak, or read one of her books, or see her on TV. The same thrill at learning that there is someone out there doing this work. After reading the article, I contacted Susan, and shortly after we met in her office. The meeting led to an internship, the internship led to a part-time job, the part-time job led to a full-time job, the full-time job led to a career. At each step of the way, Susan was incredibly attentive to my growth and development, even as we were going toe-to-toe with some of the world's biggest corporations. Even in the early days, she took the time to ensure that I knew how my work contributed to the bigger picture, ensured that I had opportunities to learn, sought my input, and worked whenever possible on consensus. In short, to add to a perspective to some of the other perspectives that have been heard here tonight, and one that all the current CCFC staff and some of the former staff that are here as well will tell you, she's pretty awesome to work for. In thinking back to that article, I've also come to realize that the same qualities that made Susan such a lousy spy, her integrity, her need to speak the truth even if it blows her cover, and above all, her belief that every discussion about children should begin with the question, is it good for them? Those are the same qualities that have made her such a terrific advocate. I've lost count of the times that Susan has begun strategy discussions by announcing, we have to do what's best for children. At first, because my brain's wired a little differently than Susan's, it would drive me a little nuts. I would say, but what exactly does that mean? What are we going to do? But over time, as I watched organizations make twisted rationales to sell out to companies like Barbie and Coca-Cola, I came to learn the importance of Susan's mantra. It led to difficult and even painful decisions, like when we decided to turn down nearly $300,000 from Facebook. It still hurts. From a settlement, because we knew that the settlement was bad for children. But every time we asked what was best for children, it led us to make the right decision. As an amazing 12 years of working with Susan comes to an end, I'm flooded with memories and recollections. I remember, of course, the victories. Like the time I received a phone call from Hasbro saying, you win, we're about to fax you a statement that we're not going to release a doll based on the Pussycat dolls. I ran to Susan's office and we huddled around the fax machine, wondering if the call was a prank. But lo and behold, the fax came through. And I'll never forget, after we risked everything to tell the world about Disney's refunds on Baby Einstein, and we were checking the internet, and about 11 o'clock, the story came out in the New York Times and celebrating. And then the next morning, seeing the print edition of the New York Times and seeing that we were on the front page and celebrating again. Above the fold, by the way. I'll treasure those memories, and I'll never forget Susan's effectiveness as an activist, her creativity, her sense of humor, her talents as a writer and a ventriloquist. But I think the thing I most admire about Susan is her confidence in seeking advice and the amazing stable of people she has cultivated that she can turn to. I've sat in on countless calls where Susan asks others for help and they never fail to respond. And what's amazing is you can tell that the reason they are helping is not because they're hoping she'll reciprocate sometime, although undoubtedly she will. The reason people are responsive to Susan is because they believe in what she's doing and they believe in her. And one of the countless things I've learned about her leadership, that might be the most important. Because if we are going to give children the childhood they deserve, we need people who will stand up to Disney and Mattel and McDonald's. But we also need people who inspire people to care about each other and to care about each other's children. And Susan is amazing at both. So thank you for an incredible 12 years, for being an incredible mentor, a fantastic friend, and the best partner in crime anyone could ask for. It is such an honor to follow in your footsteps. And now our next presenter needs no introduction.
Oh, there she is now. Susan.